Ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, small yellow teddy bears and super intelligent shades of the color sky blue pink, however you may identify, that's fine. Today, my very special guest is Neah, who is a relatively recent, I believe, addition to the community in terms of social media influencing and stuff. So this is an opportunity for her to tell us all about that. So I guess start out with where do we find you on social media, right up front. And then tell us your story. How did you come across this lifestyle and what was it that was going on beforehand and what's changed? Yeah, the whole thing. So I can shut up and you can talk. Go for it.
Well, it's a long story if you're ready, but I am on YouTube primarily. My channel is Neah's Way. And I just launched a podcast channel recently that's at Neah M Nova, where I'm doing conversations like these more. All the long form stuff is there. I actually had a channel about 5 or more years ago when I first found the carnivore diet. And you were actually one of the first people that I came across that your content really helped me out. So really my story begins as a teen. I started having, I guess, what I would describe as moderate to sometimes severe IBS symptoms, lots of gut issues. And I didn't know what to do about it at the time, but I started looking into diet and, natural ways to deal with that when I was in my early 20s. I sort of thought, like the first things that were coming up were plant-based and eat lots of whole grains, more fiber, just move more and drink water and all these kinds of things. And so I started out doing a lot of stuff like that. I was getting to the point where I needed these colonic treatments to try to have an elimination. And I got some information from the woman who was doing those treatments. She tested my blood and told me I was type A. And so I should read this book called The Blood Type Diet and follow that. And so I kind of went down that path, which was even more plant-based. It told me to be vegetarian, stay away from meat, all of that stuff. And so I really was on that whole side of the spectrum for probably the first 5 years or so of my health journey. And without going into tons of detail, like everything just got worse. None of that stuff was helping. I was having times where I was feeling like I was going to black out at work. I was getting so dizzy and, it was painful. I ended up in the ER a couple times, just doubled over in pain, thinking like, I don't know, there must be an obstruction or something, but they would scan me and say, nothing's wrong with me. And so it was around this time too, I started having breakouts of psoriasis. And things just started to stack on top of each other. So there were also some mental health concerns that honestly I didn't realize how bad they were until I've gotten to the other side of them now. Pretty extreme social anxiety, and then it was sort of contrasted with these apathetic periods where I just didn't feel anything. I was pretty numb to the world and, disinterested in doing things that used to, give me pleasure, activities and things like that. And so it just was really this slow degradation. So yeah, about 5 years of that. And then I stumbled across this blog called Paleo Leap, and it was all about ancestral, the whole other side of the spectrum in terms of mindset. And it was like a light bulb went off. It just clicked. It was like, this makes so much sense, to eat much more in line with what we would have been adapted to consuming, right? And so I immediately switched my diet and cut out grains, and sort of followed that standard whole food paleo thing. Symptoms started getting better, but I plateaued pretty shortly after that. So really from then, like for the next probably 8 years or so, it was this slow process of removing foods. I learned about FODMAPs and sort of started to hear about keto and how that could maybe help. And it was just really taking things out of my diet slowly and experimenting until I ended up at only meat one day, and then realized it was actually a thing. And that was right around when Sean Baker was on Joe Rogan. I saw his podcast, and then Michaela Peterson's story popped up. And then it was like, your video started coming up, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is actually helping people. This is a thing. And it's safe to, looks like it's safe, and it's helping people with inflammation and gut problems and all this stuff. And so at that time, I started a YouTube channel to document my experience, but I got really overwhelmed with questions that people had. And I still just sort of had this imposter syndrome. It's like, well, I'm not qualified to talk about this. I don't want to hurt anybody by giving them the wrong advice. And many other things played into me quitting that, but I finally just sort of quit. And then I got pregnant, had a baby, kind of went off the diet. Alcohol is a huge part of this story too, which I didn't really bring in, but I self-medicated with alcohol very heavily for a lot of that time in the past as well, for this anxiety and stuff like that. And so I had my baby March of 2020, right when the pandemic began. And so it was just, my health went to the back burner. And then I sort of hit this rock bottom place again about a year ago where I was like, I have to get back on this diet. I have to quit drinking. Like, this is not the human being that I want to be. And I knew what worked. And so now it's been a little over a year and I'm still troubleshooting some things. But I have gotten off alcohol, gotten off coffee. My anxiety is, I'd say 80 to 90% gone. My gut issues are 80 to 90% gone. I still have a little bit of skin issue that I'm trying to figure out what to do about. And I have some kind of cyclical symptoms that keep popping up that are sort of a mystery to me. But I really just think that staying the course with what I'm doing right now and, continuing to modify other things in my lifestyle is really what I need to be doing. So it's really, the diet's really the only thing that has ever touched any and all of the symptoms that I've experienced. And so I was like, I have to go back online and share this information and kind of get over my fear of that, because people need to know that this is an option and a tool. So here I am.
Awesome. So, there's quite a few threads there. First of all, I didn't realize you'd actually had a channel previously, so you're really not new at this. You've had a previous go at it, and I think that's quite common as well in terms of people's dietary approaches. Like, a lot of people say, "Oh, I've been carnivore for a year," and then you go, "Okay, well, you're just a newbie," which in effect you are. But then say, "Oh, well, I tried it 5 years ago, and it didn't work out for whatever reason, and I gave that up. I had a kid," like what you're talking about, and all of that stuff. Yeah, a year in is kind of one of those almost crucial landmarks that a person goes across, and you'll start, I guess, analyzing where you've got to, what's changed in a year of being carnivore. So what do you think are the major changes over your first year? You've kind of alluded to some of them, but I guess flesh them out if you can a bit. Just obviously only stuff
Sure.
you're comfortable sharing, of course, but
yeah, and I share about the uncomfortable stuff, the gut issues and the anxiety and the alcohol. That's really what I talk about most, is because I think they're not talked about enough, and people suffer in silence, and they're ashamed of their addiction, or they're ashamed of the way their gut functions or doesn't function. And so that's kind of part of my mission, is to make this stuff a little bit easier for people to understand, like they're not alone. And so really those are the main things that I came to it. So the first time I did carnivore, it was 11 months, and I was still drinking alcohol during that time, but my gut symptoms went completely away. Like my skin, I had kind of rosacea on my face, and I've had bouts of guttate psoriasis. I had zero skin problems. All my gut symptoms went away. I felt like brain fog was gone. Anxiety was great. I felt like $1 million, but I was still drinking. And so I thought, oh, this time I'm going to feel even better, right? Because I'm going to cut the alcohol and do carnivore at the same time. But it was rocky in the beginning. But I would say, like, my digestion is, I would say 80 to 90% better. I don't struggle with any of the severe pain, gas, bloating, like pain where I was just doubled over thinking like, maybe I need to go to the hospital. Like there's something's going to explode, or like something is seriously wrong,
yeah.
That hasn't happened at all. The regularity is definitely there. I've had some issue, I think, with just dialing in electrolytes and things like that have just caused things to be a little bit on the looser side sometimes, but I'll take that over what I used to experience. And so, and then along with that, the mental health is so intimately linked with the gut. And so, I was using caffeine, drinking tons and tons of coffee every day to wake up and to feel motivated and to do the basic things that I needed to do. And then I was using alcohol at night to go to sleep and relax and cope with stress and all these other things. And then I was using alcohol at night to cope with stress and go to sleep and all that kind of stuff. And so the fact that I've been able to remove both of those things 100% from my life and not feel like garbage, like I feel really good, that's almost the best thing that I could report, because those things used to control me. And they were the last two things that really had a grip on me mentally and emotionally. And so I've really had to, like, as my health has improved, I feel like it's just opened up this whole inner journey that I've had to go on to learn how to cope with life and to cope with things in a healthy way. And so that's really brought on a lot of other positive lifestyle changes that I think I wouldn't have done if I hadn't started with the diet,
Yeah. Oh, look, there are certainly some parallels there in your story with things that I've experienced as well in my life in terms like things like crippling anxiety, which people wouldn't imagine me of being someone that would have that. They would go like, I'm often accused of being arrogant rather than actually anxious in any way. By the way, people that want to accuse me of arrogance, go and look up the definition of arrogance, please. It says inappropriate over self-confidence. My self-confidence is earned, thanks. I have the runs on the board, but that's for another day. Yeah, but I mean, there was at one point that I was to the point where I was basically agoraphobic. And for those who don't know, that means afraid to leave your house, hiding under the bed sort of thing. Crippling fibromyalgia, gastric distress and dysfunction, all sorts of autoimmune things, all of that. So, also, alcoholism is a part of my past as well. So, cheers to that. That's a great thing to get a hold of and get under control. Absolutely. Brilliant stuff. Awesome story. Great to hear. And, welcome to the human race, or welcome back to the human race, basically. Eating a species-appropriate, species-specific diet can absolutely change your life for the better. That said, if you're comfortable with it, you mentioned a couple of other things that are kind of still lagging, a few cyclic things, which gives me a bit of a clue as to what they might be. Is that something we can talk about, or is that behind the scenes discussion? Yeah.
No, I'm open to all of it. I just got some testing done because I didn't have any baseline stuff done in the beginning. I haven't been to a doctor since I was pregnant. So, I got some of that if you want, or just, whatever.
Go for it. Let's hear it. If you, anything you want to share, of course. Yeah.
Well, it's, psoriasis is the main thing. And and I'm not struggling with it really bad. There was a time where I had it all over my body. I looked like a leopard. And that's when I went to the dermatologist. This was when I was like 25 or 26. And I lived in Florida at the time. And, they gave me the steroid cream or whatever. I was in there and they had like 5 medical students in there with clipboards, and so there was like this whole group of people looking at me. And then when the students left, she came over and she was like, here's your prescription, but by the way, if you just go out in the sun and don't wear sunblock, she had to like whisper it to me. And so I've always known that sunlight, and vitamin D is probably something I either struggle with to absorb properly, or I just, for whatever reason, don't get enough. I make it a point to be out in the sun a lot now, but I still have, anyway, this one little patch on my knee that just won't go away completely. And then I'll get like little spots on my face. It looks kind of like acne, but it's not, it's psoriasis. And it hasn't really gotten worse, but it just seems to not get better unless I'm in the sun like 90 minutes a day in Texas sun where, it's just super intense. And so I don't always know if that's what I should, if that's the only reason or not. My vitamin D came back at a 43. My vitamin D came back at 43. So it's not technically out of range, but I still feel like that's probably too low. Given my symptoms. And then really all my other labs, I haven't gotten hormones tested yet. I want to do that next, but everything else looks fine. My CRP was less than 3. I did the sedimentation rate. That was less than 2 or 2. I think that was very low. LDL was 128, HDL 77, trigs 47, and no other like giant red flags. So, I didn't really get anything. And I had a microbiome test, which is kind of the other big thing that I just put out a video about. But it came back with zero evidence of maldigestion. So I'm not, struggling to digest fat or protein, zero evidence of inflammation or IBD markers. And so that's great. But it said I had like extreme dysbiosis. And I think that's probably just because I don't fit, I'm not eating any fiber and I'm not eating, so like it's not going to line up with the healthy cohort of people that I'm being compared to. And so I'm not really, I'm not concerned about that, but there could still be something within that is correct. Like maybe I have a little bit of dysbiosis, but I'm not sure exactly how to interpret that. So
Right. Perhaps I can help in that regard.
Okay.
We know more about the surface of Mars, definitely and for sure, than we do about human microbiota. What is a healthy microbiome? It's one that's possessed by a person who is apparently functional and healthy. There are many different kinds of healthy microbiome, therefore, because there are many kinds of healthy people that do many kinds of lifestyles. Your summation there is absolutely correct in that what they are saying is your biome doesn't match what we believe is healthy based on some associations that are incomplete and do not cater for a carnivore eating audience. Ergo, it's wrong and bad because the test says so, despite the fact that your symptomology, or lack of it, absolutely establishes that there ain't nothing broke here, so you don't need to fix it. So hopefully that's helpful to folks. The other thing that kind of comes to mind is, what are your thoughts on, have you heard about, and have you considered the possibility that you might be oxalate dumping in terms of the skin issues?
I've definitely considered it. I have eaten a lot of high oxalate foods in the past, over my entire lifetime. So I definitely, would qualify from that side of the coin. And I know that because of the way, especially psoriasis has been, I've had periods of my life where I have been quote unquote eating really healthy, like not eating junk and not drinking a whole lot, and I've had psoriasis. And then I've had periods where I've been doing everything wrong and, living very unhealthfully and had clear skin. So I feel like it's not completely directly related to food necessarily. It is sort of some kind of detoxification happening. I did try adding in some black tea, some decaf black tea, some oxalate, like microdosing sort of just to see. And I didn't notice a reduction in symptoms. I'm also having a little bit of joint pain in my knees, which it's very mild, but that started during pregnancy and I thought it would go away, but it just kind of hasn't gone away. And so my joints also, I tend to be hyper flexible. I'm not like double jointed, but I have sort of that where it's like my elbow will extend, hyperextend. And so that could be a part of it. So, I've tried to put all these little puzzle pieces together, but if it is oxalates, then I think it's just a matter of time till it goes away pretty much.
Yeah. Decades sometimes, unfortunately, for a full elimination. And it's the cyclic thing that gets me straight away, and the fact that it's a skin thing. Okay, obviously it may well also be an autoimmune activation, especially in the few years surrounding and postpartum, because autoimmunity can become heightened during that part of a woman's life. The history lines up in terms of some of the past habits can also be affective in that regard. So these are all possibilities, I think, personally. It sounds, however, though, like you've got it together in terms of the habits, the lifestyle, sun exposure as much as possible within the realms of not going and getting sunburned, obviously. Great, awesome. And it sounds like, obviously your health in general is unrecognizable from what it used to be, as is mine, So we're just N equals 2, of course. The problem with those that say we're just N equals 2 is that there are thousands and thousands and thousands of us. So there must be something to the story, perhaps. Who knows? I don't. How do you see this going in the future? What's in store? What's the plan in terms of the diet, lifestyle? Could things get better? How do you think it's gonna, if you had to gaze in the crystal ball?
I think this is the plan for me, most definitely, for the foreseeable future. I'm somebody that, I got to this way of eating through experimenting on my own. And I looked to outside sources, but I've really done it mostly intuitively. And so kind of the reason for getting some of these labs too was just to almost get to see if it lined up with my intuition. It's like, I feel like I've been feeling like the sun is just going to heal me, like the more I'm in the sun, the more I'm like, I just need this all the time, so then when I got that result, I was like, it's in range, but it could be considered low still. So that sort of lines up. So what my intuition is saying is that I just need some more time. And I think that's again why I want to talk about my story, is because I feel like, especially on the internet, you hear all these kind of 30-day miracles, which I understand that people do experience that. And people get this huge contrast pretty quickly when they, switch over to this way of eating, which is great. But I think some things do take longer to heal. And, going through that process in a more gentle way versus like trying to detox really hard or flush my liver or do some of this crazy stuff that you hear, that you should do to like help your body heal faster. It's like, I just trust that my body's going to take care of it for the most part in the way that it's able to respond right now. And so I don't want to put a bunch of pressure on my detoxification system if that's not healthy. So really, as far as the future goes, I think I'm just comfortable where I'm at. Like you said, the night, like, and I have to change my perspective sometimes too, and just remember what I was like, even just a year ago, how under the thumb I was of these things that were still controlling me. And I was just like, somebody could drop a pin in here and I would just be like ready to fly off the handle, just on edge constantly, like in fight or flight all the time, just couldn't catch a break, in my head. And that's not how I feel anymore. And so like just those changes alone are worth, like, that. Just those changes alone tell me that this is the right path to stay on, and just to be patient and to like, I was kind of curious what you thought of this grounding mat. Do you think that actually works, that you plug into your wall? Because that's what I did to replace my morning coffee, because I was doing the decaf and I was trying to be like, oh, let me get the mold free organic, the fancy decaf, and maybe I'll be able to tolerate that. But it was still messing with me. So I bought this and I'm like, I'm going to sit on this in the morning and that's going to, help me neutralize or whatever. And so, I mean, do you think that's
Okay.
is that
Well, first
a
of all,
hoax or no?
I think in terms of healing as a process, I think you've outlined that perfectly. Absolutely perfectly. It's a process. People always say to me, how quickly does this work? This way of this lifestyle, the things that you suggest a person does. And I always say, well, how long did it take you to mess your health up? This is a process. And yes, there are stories about people who went carnivore and healed 2 minutes before they went carnivore. And excuse my language, I refer to these people as hateful bastards, frankly, because the rest of us have to go through a process. So, that's how that is. In terms of the grounding mat thing, right. When it was first suggested to me that electrical grounding or earthing was a good idea, my immediate response was, I'm a scientist, for God's sake. What are you putting this in front of me for goodness sake, And somebody with enough foresight and enough courage to confront me, because that can be quite scary, I'm told. This person said to me, well, if you are a scientist, you'll go and check out the science, won't you then? Rather than reacting emotively. And I went, fair cop, you got me, because I had no idea. So I went and looked into it. Here's what I found. When you ground yourself electrically, be that either by connecting yourself directly to the earth, bare feet on the ground, or a grounding mat, makes no real difference. It's the same thing. A couple of things happen that are quite remarkable. Number one, the instant you ground yourself, the effective viscosity, thickness of your blood drops by a factor of 3. Your blood becomes vastly thinner, much easier for your heart to pump around your body. Your blood pressure therefore drops immediately, commensurate with that. and your perceived level of stress, anxiety, and activation of your sympathetic system changes immediately. When they put electrodes around people's brains and see what brainwave activity is going on, when you ground for long enough, often enough, what happens is your fight and flight brainwave activity tends to transmute across to rest and relaxation. And that's a great thing, obviously, because you're less distressed, whatever. If you have an aberrant cortisol profile, grounding normalizes that. If it was normal in the first place, nothing changes. So that shows that it's not detrimental in that regard as well. Wound healing is expedited, made more fast, happens better just by grounding. Sleep quality improves, every metric of sleep quality pretty much, because of rest and relaxation that happens when you ground. All sorts of things happen commensurate with grounding. And then you go, well, okay, let's apply some common sense. Well, we evolved grounded to the earth as part of the earth. We're part of that system in that electrical field. It's only in the last 100 years or so that we've insulated ourselves in our houses because of electrical code. We drive around in vehicles with rubber tires. We walk around in shoes with rubber soles. We have disconnected ourselves from Mother Earth, the thing that we evolved on and connected to. Of course, our bodies are upset with that. Different. What's this? It thinks. So I think grounding is a great thing. I'm always promoting 5 things a person should do in their life to promote the least likelihood of chronic systemic overburden in terms of inflammatory process. They are a 100% carnivore diet, the fine products from the folks at Cerule, electrical grounding and earthing, blocking blue light after dark, and high intensity burst repeat and or resistance training 3-4 times a week, 45 minutes per session. And I think that, the reason I promote those things is because in my experience over the last 5 years, that takes out 95% of people's problems. Obviously, don't smoke, don't drink if you all of that sort of thing. Deal with carbohydrate addictions, do what it takes to get those things under control, as you've done. So I think you're on the path, absolutely, to the optimal place a person could be. Now, I was going earlier when you said when I was 25, as if that was years ago. Can I be rude? How old are you?
I am 37. I'll be 38 this year.
Wow! No way! Absolutely not. You're lying to us. Impressive.
Not, but
that's an example of what the carnivore lifestyle can do for a person, even if you haven't necessarily led a blameless life hitherto, as I haven't. I'm actually 107, by the way. Yeah. No, I'm not really, but people often tell me I don't look my age either. So, it's a good thing. And I think it's quite common when you look around. Well, if you just do a compare and contrast visually between people who follow our way of doing things with people who perhaps follow that other extreme so-called ideal that those other people follow, that should probably be enough for you to make your decision, who it is that you should probably get alongside and, what lifestyle you should lead. Even if you don't understand our biological evolutionary process, you'd probably just go, well, let's look at the results. Who's winning? Right, I'm on this team. I would. Anyway, there it is. Okay, look, that's half an hour spot on. So that's perfect. That's awesome. Just remind us once again where we find your social media so that we can cross-pollinate and that people can just race over there in their thousands and subscribe to support your channel and boost your algorithm and all that kind of stuff.
Well, thank you. My main channel is Neah's Way, and my podcast channel is Neah M Nova. And so, yeah, that's where I share lifestyle videos, vlogs. I do live streams. I'm putting some fitness content out now as well, and just post about this lifestyle and what's going on.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much for your valuable time. And we do appreciate that very, very much indeed. Thank you for being open and being prepared to share with us some stuff that, can be uncomfortable at times to talk about stuff in the past. We appreciate you. Thanks for that. And as I say, all my people, the Meat Militia, you have your orders. Go and subscribe immediately to all Neah's stuff and follow her. Otherwise, you will receive a late night visit from His Royal Highness Ted. And he will bring his bucket of soapy frogs. See you then. Ciao for now.